Chris is he's going to go over safety and everything. Yep, going over it all. Yes, ma'am.
And red is actually on.
Christopher, the guy that's pioneering the rails to trail. He even suggested 1819. Development plan that you'll see. These people. Just a. And see, they took up the rails.
Hi, Rob. Hi, Sandy. So I'm just, for the format for this, I'm just going to announce what it is. I'm going to turn it over to Chris, and I will allow questions when he's finished. Or along the way if somebody's got I think maybe just wait. Okay. Is everybody ready? Chris, are you ready? Okay. You're good? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our workshop regarding the Rails to Trails project here in Lynn Haven. I'm very pleased today that we have, thanks to the city manager and all those who've worked very hard to get the new sound system going in here. I hope it's going to be a lot better. And also the microphone at the podium for the public. I believe it's the same as what we have, and so hopefully we'll all be able to hear each other a lot better. Do not be shy. If you cannot hear or understand what's being said, just raise your hand and let me know at any time during the meeting. The way we're going to start out today's workshop, it's from 4 until 5. Chris Forehand, who is with Panhandle Engineering and is doing the engineering on the Rails to Trails project, is going to present to us a project update. The commission, please feel free to ask questions as we go along. And for the sake of having time, if you have questions, the public, if you have questions about the project, if you just make a note of them as we go, and then before we end, we'll have public commentary so that you'll have an opportunity to ask whatever questions that you would like to ask of Mr. Forehand. That's kind of the parameters of how we'll do this. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to you, Chris, and thank you for being here and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I've got a presentation here for you. This is just kind of a project update. We've been working on the project since about, I don't know, May or June of last year. So we've been hard at it. But I'm going to turn to this next slide here. This just kind of gives you an introduction. In June of 2015, the Florida legislature funded the DOT Sun Trail program, and they had an appropriation of $25 million a year for all trail projects in the state of Florida, which was supposed to be reoccurring for 5 years. So it was a total of $125 million. So it's very important to the legislature that they fund trail projects throughout the entire state. And then in April of 2016, myself and Commissioner Friend worked together to put together the funding application along with city staff. And then in May of 2016, Commissioner Friend presented the project to the TPO, and then subsequently the TPO approved the project. Then in June of 2016, we officially applied for the grant for the engineering funds, which were $268,000. That included the surveying, environmental, geotechnical, permitting, and design. And then shortly thereafter, the Sun Trail program awarded a 100% grant to the city to fund all of the engineering activities. And then in April of 2017, we were authorized by the commission by task order to proceed with the engineering. And then about mid-December, we were far enough along in the design that we applied for $2.75 million in grant funds for construction of phase one. And that our phase one that we chose was from 390 to 389. If those funds are awarded, the city would need to contribute 10% of those funds. That's the way that the application is set up. And just to continue on in the introduction, we think that the construction grant award notification is expected in July of this year, so we're not too far away from that. And then just to back up a little, in February of 2018 of this year, we submitted the 90% plans to DOT for approval. And we have those plans here if anybody wants to look at those. And then in March, a couple of weeks ago, we received some minor comments from DOT, which we're currently addressing those, and we're hoping to have all those back to DOT next week. And then obviously we're here today with the public workshop and update. And then if we receive the funds this summer, we anticipate that we would advertise and bid the project somewhere around October, November timeframe. And then, of course, we would begin construction in December or January. And that's if we receive the funds, if the commission decides to fund their 10% of the match. Okay, this next slide shows a few different photos of the trail system with the rails before they were removed. As you know, and some of you in the audience may not know, but the city acquired a railroad easement from the Air Force sale of the fuel depot parcel. So they currently have an easement, okay? The railroad is approximately 3.69 miles long, and it includes all three phases for that 3.69 miles. In February of 2018, the developer, as part of the sale of the property agreement, were able to scrap the old rail iron, and they had in the agreement that they would split the proceeds from the scrap, 50% with the city. And it's my understanding that all of the rail has been removed, if not all, maybe most of it. And so I would think that the city should expect something pretty soon from the developer. This just shows the trail phasing master plan. And I'll use my pointer here to show the audience, but if you look up here at the very top of the screen, this is the very beginning of where 10th Street meets the entrance to the old fuel depot, and that is what we are calling phase 2 of the project. Phase 1 of the project goes from 390 down the railroad track all the way to, it actually goes all the way to 389. And then the very last phase would go, the phase 3 would go from 389 down to 231. Okay, just some general trail information. The trail does include trailheads, which those are locations where vehicles can park, unload their bikes, go for a ride, ride a certain distance, come back. The trailheads do have lighting and rest areas. There are some rest areas along the route at certain points that we've placed. There's no lighting proposed along the entire route, simply because of the cost. And just to give you a comparison, I think the lighting on Mosley Drive that we did with the sidewalk project was about $400,000. So you can imagine it would be, a substantial cost to do that. So right now, all we have lighting is in the trailhead areas, some of the main intersections, and some of those areas. So if the commission decided, you wanted lighting along the whole route, it's just something we need to talk about moving forward. We've got lots of signage along the route, tells folks where you are on the trail, upcoming intersections, upcoming connection points. You know, a lot of those connection points would be obvious, but some of them not so much. For instance, if you were approaching Mosley Drive, you may not know you were approaching Mosley Drive just because it's so wooded in that area. The phase 2 that I mentioned earlier, that's the section from 390 up through the old fuel depot, cannot be constructed until the Marina Island fuel depot developer makes a decision on their development as it pertains to roadway and access options. So as they move forward and as they do their traffic studies and determine what they need to do to move forward with their development, that would determine if and when they would need to build a roadway. If they do build a roadway, the trail would have to go along with that roadway. So the next bullet there, phase 2, which is the segment I just mentioned, if it was a standalone trail system, it would be $650,000. And then phase 3, which is a segment from 389 down to 231, is estimated at $800,000. This slide shows some typical trailheads and some of the rest areas. The parking lot you see there is an existing parking lot that is there at the intersection of Georgia and 390. So we kind of anticipated that being a trailhead, you know, where folks could park and ride along the trail. There's a little triangle area you can see there that's got some little benches and a pavilion. And if you look at the slide over to the right, that's kind of an example of the pavilion and the little bench, you know, that keeps the sun, rain off of you. And that's the same detail that we've used at some of the bus stops for the trolley system. This is a typical trailhead. If the developer of the fuel depot did not construct a road into the old fuel depot site, this is what the trailhead would look like at that end. So when we started this, you have to remember we had already been authorized to design the whole distance. So if they don't build it, then this is what we would end up with on that phase. If you look, it's got some of the benches and pavilions. It's got bike racks and rest areas. It's got a handicap parking space. And then this next slide shows the trailhead at the very south end on phase 3 as it comes off of 231. So this would be a right in, right out entrance exit because there's no median cut there on 231. But the same kind of setup there. It's got a rest area with park benches and pavilions and bike racks. This just shows a typical trail section. The trail is a 12-foot wide multi-use path. It's what DOT calls a non-motorized trail. So it's bicycles and pedestrians only. This kind of shows you, we're going to utilize the existing road base, so to speak, for the train railway. And then we're only going to clear just enough room to be able to construct the trail, but then obviously, you know, be able to maintain the trail over time as the trees, you know, grow in. All right, this next slide, you know, I've talked a lot about the trailheads and parking areas, but as I was doing the design, I realized that there were natural trailheads along the route that could be utilized. And so I reached out to McDonald's and Winn-Dixie and asked them about having access points to their parking lots, so where folks could come park at these locations, eat, shop, do whatever, you know, maybe they could ride their bike, you know, whatever. And so it just kind of served as a natural, and they get the benefit, you know, of the trail drawing people there to their business. So they both agreed verbally. We're about to the point where we're going to start solidifying that with both of those, you know, both Winn-Dixie and McDonald's. If you look there, you can see where we would have ramps coming down from the trail into their parking lot at both locations. Okay, this next slide, this is kind of a key point up to the far left. That is I guess it would be the northeast corner of Walmart. It would be over on the side where the new liquor store that they constructed. And then if you see there, that's where Minnesota comes back behind Walmart. And then we've reached out to Walmart about having a connection to their parking lot because we thought that would be the most obvious. But they've had a little bit of pushback about it because they're concerned about their liability. So we're not really sure how that's going to work out with Walmart. The next connection down there to the bottom right, for those of you who live in Mowat Highlands, you're probably familiar with this. This is the southernmost point of Mowat Highlands where it intersects with 24th Street. And Kirkwell extends all the way down to the end, and it comes really close to the rail system. And so we would propose adding a connector trail that connects to the end of Kirkwell. So if anybody that lives, there's 300 and something homes in Mowat Highlands that could access the trail from that location. Okay, these next two access points, the one on the left there is Mosley Drive, where Mosley Drive intersects with 389. That is Bayhaven Elementary there right across the street. So that would be a heavily traveled area connection point, for students. Maybe you have students that live in Mowat Highlands, ride their bike to school and ride down the trail and go all the way to Bayhaven. And then the next location connects to County Road 389. I know I have State Road up there, but it is a county road. The county just finished a multi-use trail that goes from Baldwin Road all the way to 390. So this trail in phase 1 would dead end at that trail. So it'd be a nice connecting point. So those are sort of the reasons that we chose this area to be phase 1. And then this picture, this is taken out at Gales Trails at the beach. It's their multi-use trail that they built several years ago. They've been adding on to that trail over the years. So this is a photo I took of their trail. It looks like maybe what our trail would look like once it's completed. I've actually just finished a design for the beach about 4 months ago and applied for $1 million for their next segment of their trail, and the DOT funded it. So that's good news. This map is the Florida Sun Trail map. This shows a kind of a master planning map of Northwest Florida. And if you look down here in the bottom, if you look at the route of this trail, it follows the Gulf Coast Parkway. And you probably read about that in the paper. And so it looks like that's kind of their trail. And if you look right here, I think this little leg is our trail right there. And then the leg going down towards Panama City is 231. So I think with the 231 widening that they're planning on doing, the 6-laning, I think they're proposing a trail as part of that. So that would kind of be, that trail. So Panama City's also looking at some components of their city too to add some trails. So the legislatures, it's really important to them to have a trail all the way across the state of Florida. And I anticipate that after the 5 years are up, I think they'll continue funding it. And so in closing, we suggest naming the trail. I know that, at the beach, they named their trail. I know there's a lot of other trails that they've named, so that's something that and the reason we're bringing that up now is because for signage purposes. So we have signs along the trail. We need to know that now so we can make whatever arrangements we need to make those signs. And as I mentioned earlier, the 90% plans are here. If anybody wants to look through them, be glad to look through them with anyone, answer any questions, and we'll just kind of open it up to public input or commission input.
Okay, thank you. This is, again, Chris Forehand with Panhandle Engineering, and thank you for all your work on this and for the grant work especially. And at this point, what I'd like to do is to first give the commission the opportunity for questions or input, and then after that, I will give the public the same opportunity. So anyone from the commission have a question or comment from Mr. Forehand?
Mayor, I do. If
Sure,
you don't
go
mind.
ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll try to be brief to give the public as much opportunity to speak. That's who we really want to hear from today. But I think everyone knows I kind of took over this project from Ms. Whitkoff, and I made a promise to her then that I would continue the idea of the Rails to Trails for Lynn Haven. So I kind of just wanted to give my own little update of what I've been working on, and we still have a lot of work to do. I really appreciate Mr. Forehand and Panhandle Engineering, when he spoke about the application and the funding, he really did the majority of the work on that. I just kind of pointed in the right direction from some of the research and stuff that I'd done, and also for the TPO. But the funding is obviously the very most important part of all this, and we still have additional funding that I think we can go after. But also just wanted to mention that during that funding process that we did do some lobbying over it for the legislators. I even spoke with the governor on trying to pass that program so that we'd have that funding available. As the chair of the TPO, I did invite Mr. Allen over. Mr. Allen is the president of Greenways to Trails, which is a nonprofit organization, and he is very passionate about Rails to Trails, and he's given me a lot of guidance. I still continue to work with him. He's helping me with different people that I need to go see and to talk to about additional funding for the project. And so Mr. Allen wanted to be here today, but he's on vacation, so he's going to come over in May and look at the trail, and if the commission would like, he can give a presentation just to give more information about that as well. As you all know, we negotiated with the developer to secure the rails, which, you know, that was a no-brainer, I think, for them actually, because Rails to Trails is the new golf course for development, so they're actually getting a great deal by us doing this as well. Again, planning another trip over to Tallahassee to try to secure some of the funding. I just think that, you know, none of this gets done, and I know, like Mr. Forehand mentioned, 10% from the city, but we want to get as much of it done as possible. And the last thing I'd say is it's kind of hard for me to say, but I will. My family has asked that if the commission would consider attaching my name somehow to the project. I would be humbled and honored if you would consider that. I've done a lot of work on the project, and I think I've gone above and beyond a little bit of the normal commissioner duties on the project, but that's all I have. And if anyone ever wants to talk to me about the project, please feel free to reach out to me. I've got an entire binder full of stuff that I can go over with you and kind of fill in the details if you'd like. That's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to have input or have questions?
Yes, Mayor. I'm certainly not opposed to having Commissioner Friend's name attached in some form, but I'd also like to highly recommend that at least this part between 390 and 389 be named after Mr. Wishart, who is certainly known by a lot of people, a teacher at Mosley that lost his life riding a bicycle here in Lynn Haven on the road. And I know his family would be certainly appreciative, to say the least, but I'd certainly like to consider his name being attached. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Does
Mayor.
anyone else from the commission have?
Mayor, I did forget to mention,
Okay.
you know, Ms. Whitkoff originally had the idea, and so in talking with my family and some other folks, you know, we have the trailheads, and Mr. Wisher may be an opportunity there too. But the other thing that I thought about, along the trail, if we could put up other memorials to folks that have lost their lives to either cycling or pedestrians, and that may be a way to accomplish that as well. I haven't talked to the family, but I've talked to the county when it came up before about naming something after him. And along that stretch where he lost his life, the county does plan on doing some bike lane stuff there, and I think that would be very honorable to do something there. But I know we've lost a couple of cyclists in Lynn Haven, and I don't know about pedestrians, but just another thought there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Anyone else on the board have a comment or a question?
Yes, Mayor. Not relating to the name, I think that's going to be something that is going to be more than we get to tonight. But my question, Mr. Forehand, first I appreciate the presentation, and out of all of it, I think this is a smart move we're making doing this. But I have a question that I haven't thought to ask before. How are we crossing 231? I mean, obviously that's not 231. I'm sorry, 77.
It has a push button signalization, so it would actually stop traffic.
It will stop traffic. Okay, thank you. That's all I got, Mayor.
Thank you. Does anyone else on the board have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I do have one comment. First of all, Chris, thank you for your presentation. It was very informational, and you've done a good job, you and both Commissioner Friend so far. And this is a question, I guess, I'm kind of thinking out loud about this. I know you had mentioned that there's no lighting that's being proposed. Is it possible that perhaps we could apply for some sort of grant that will fall under Parks and Recreation that can be used to light some of it, or maybe perhaps all of it, piggyback off of another?
No, I think you could use SunTrail money for the lighting.
Okay.
It was so much more.
Right.
You know, maybe it's something, you know, maybe we bid the first phase, see how much it comes in at, and then we can always come back if we have money left over just from the first phase and add lighting. You know, maybe we only add it in certain areas that are more congested, maybe some of the areas that have, you know, more streets, more access points, you know, some of those areas, because but the SunTrail can fund the lighting.
Okay.
So we can always go back and have another separate application just for the lighting.
Okay. And I also want to mention the fact that, you know, not taking anything from Commissioner Friend, and I know he has worked hard on this, but I also know that Commissioner Whitkoff, on the years that I served with her on this commission, this was always her baby, if you will. This is something that she wanted the city to come to fruition. And so I certainly would like to see her name attached to it as well, because she did work very hard. She tried to get as much information as she possibly could, and this is really what she wanted before she left office. So I would like to see that.
Thank you. Does anyone else have other comments or questions on the board? I would like to also concur really with all that's been said. Mrs. Whitkoff, with her Rails to Trails, was one of my inspirations in seeking the office of mayor, because she was very forward thinking about it, and I would like to see her name associated with it as well. And again, not in any, not trying to cut Commissioner Friend short at all, but I do feel very passionately about Ray Wishart being attached to this in a big way. He was an inspirational teacher at Mosley High School. He was a great friend to many. I know he was a friend of mine, so I do have a personal stake in it. But when he passed away, if you want to go back and look at history, I keep a very avid Facebook social media presence, and there were literally hundreds and hundreds of students who spoke in favor of Mr. Wishart being recognized. And when you are a teacher for over 30 years, there's so many people that you touch and so many lives that are touched. And, you know, I don't want us to remember Mr. Wishart and that he lost his life. I want us to celebrate his life. But on the very week that he retired from teaching, he went out to take that bicycle ride, and because he had to ride on a highway and there was no place really safe for him to ride, he lost his life, and all of us suffered for it. So that's my pitch, but I do agree with Commissioner Friend that there are many places in this design where people can be recognized, and so I just wanted to put that forward, and then we can go forward in how we want to do that as a group and reach some consensus, I'm sure. So that's what I had to say. And is there anyone else who wanted to say anything on the board, and then I'll go with the public comment? Thank you. Okay, at this time, what I'd like to do is to have comments, questions, concerns from the public. And if you don't mind, the format that I would like to follow is just if you would come to the podium and express your concern or ask your question. Please keep your comments as brief as possible, with 3 minutes being the limit. And then after you ask your question, if it's directed to the commission, then one of us could answer. And if it's directed to Mr. Forehand, then I'll let him take the position at the podium and answer. Okay? So that'll be our format. Who would like to go first? Anyone? Yes, Mr. Walker.
Good afternoon, Rich Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. Thank you for this new system. Sounds meta. I only have just one question. This of course goes way back, even before Mrs. Whitkoff and a few others, to the Crayfish Trail that was that was designed a long time ago, which would have been put in probably free of charge and is documented in Washington, D.C. My concern here is just one question dealing with the entrance at the fuel depot. We're alluding now to an easement. Could you possibly explain this term easement in conjunction with the, I'm going to say it, $18 million road that's going to come out of that fuel depot? I don't know how the easement is designed in conjunction with Marina Boulevard. Is this a share thing? Do we have enough room there? Who has predominance, the road or the rail to trail? The term easement is brand new because it was never mentioned before.
Okay, thank you. And if you'll want to have a seat, I'll have Mr. Forehand come forward and answer the question. And there were several questions asked there, but easement is not a new term. It's been at the table for a long time. But Mr. Forehand, go ahead.
Okay. When the fuel depot property was sold, as part of the agreement, the buyers of the property wanted to buy all of the property, and they wanted to give the city an easement for the entire route, all the way down to 231. And then they wanted to deed over that property to the city after a 2-year period. I think it had something to do with their taxes. So the city still has the same right, whether they have an easement or the right-of-way, no matter whether we're in the 2-year period now or after the 2-year period, we still have the same rights to it, whether it's an easement or a right-of-way. The developer has the right, whether it's an easement or a right-of-way, to build an access road from 390 into the project. So that's sort of why we're holding off on that phase now until they figure out if and when they have to build a road. If they have to build a road in that easement or right-of-way, even if the city owns it, they have the right to build the road. They would have to accommodate the trail along with it. Currently, the trail is designed in the center where the railroad tracks were, because when we received the funds, that was our marching orders, was to design it that way. If the developer has to build a road, then he will have to design the trail over to one side or the other. So did I answer all your questions?
Thank you. Okay. Does anyone else have a question? Mrs. Walker.
Janet Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. Did I understand correctly that the total of the 3 phases is 3.69 miles long from the outside of the gate all the way to 231? And we are doing it in 3 phases, even though phase one is 390 to 389. Correct. I did not see a price for that specific portion. Big part? 2.75 million. Okay, that's the phase that you would tackle first. You mentioned the trailhead at 390 there with the parking lot that's situated. Of course, that's going to be widened there with the 390 expansion. Okay. And Mr. Russell mentioned the crossing 77, huge concern. Also crossing 389, huge concern by Bay Haven North.
It's the same type of crossing.
So the person on the trail will be pushing a button.
Push a button and it'll flash a light.
Flashing lights, and we expect 4 lanes of traffic to stop for us crossing. Well, 77 is 2 lanes one way and 2 lanes another, so 4 lanes to stop for us. Okay.
77 would stop traffic.
Pardon?
77 would be a push button to stop traffic.
Okay. 389, same situation, push button?
It would not stop traffic.
It would not stop traffic.
So there's enough time to get across.
Okay. The trail surface, asphalt, spongy stuff.
It's asphalt on the main trail, and it's concrete where it accesses the trails, depending on what.
Okay. Trail. Asphalt. Trailhead, 390, and 231.
There's Trailhead at the beginning,
By the fuel depot gate, okay,
at Georgia and 390.
correct,
And the only other one we're constructing is at 231.
correct. How about 389, no parking if somebody wants to start their access point there?
Well, there's no plans for it.
No plan,
We don't have any property, so
okay.
good access point.
No, no. I drove past it the other day looking for that specific reason. Okay. Have we heard back, I don't know if this is a trail concern, have we heard back on the scrap 50/50 pricing?
I have not. I asked about it today, we have not.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question or concern that they would like to present? Yes, sir, come on.
Good afternoon. I'm Joe Fritz. I've been a resident here of Bay County for 35 years.
Okay.
And involved in cycling in this county for 35 years, and still here today after riding a bike in Bay County that long. So one of the things that I think you need to, and you addressed it, but the signage on a trail is really very, very important. Gales Trail right now has very poor signage. When you ride that trail, there's no signage at the end of the trail. There's no markings on which way to go. When you come to the intersection of Highway 79, the traffic light stops one direction, but it's a little bit delayed when it stops the other direction. So you can actually be on your bike heading across and the traffic's still going. So the traffic signal, wherever they are, need to work properly before someone starts heading across on a bike. So I think this is great for Lynn Haven and the community, what you're doing. You'll get a lot of use out of it, but you also have to educate a little bit with your signage on what people are going to do when they get here. I just got back from the Withlacoochee Trail, which is Florida's longest trail. They have some excellent signs on that trail. One of them is that when you're riding your bike or the walkers, it says all users must stay right on this trail. When you have multiple people walking, their dogs, riding their bikes, etc., if they're on the left and people are coming, it's an accident waiting to happen. I have a friend that was involved in an accident on the Silver Comet Trail, which goes from Atlanta to Alabama. It cost the city $1.1 million to settle that suit, and it was related to signage. So it's very important to make sure the signs are there, but people know what they do when they're on this trail. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very valuable input. Is there anyone else who has a comment or a question for the engineer, for the commission, or just for the good of everyone? Yes, Ms. Harrison.
First of all, thank you. Praise God, we finally have bike paths, and even when they do roads, a little bit of a bike lane. You take your life in your hands when you try to walk or ride around here. So I'm very thankful for this trail. Thank you for everybody. Excuse me. I just have a question about maintenance. Who would the city of Lynn Haven be responsible for maintaining trash and pine straw and all that off of it? Okay. And then just a suggestion.
We all nodded, but that was a yes. Go ahead. Go ahead. For the people who couldn't hear.
A suggestion for any naming of trailheads or the trail. Perhaps get somehow come up with a system to ask the residents for their input too. I don't know if that may be your Facebook page feedback.
I think that's a
if you
very
want to be
valuable
inundated by that or not, but and as much parking as you can do at various trailheads would be wonderful. I foresee them just parking. Having come from Mosley, just parking off the side of the road wherever they feel like it. So caution there. Anyway, thank you guys for the trail. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. And I just wanted to mention this is Mrs. Harrison, who is the former principal at Mosley High School, and she just retired. So we're happy to have you here. Maybe you'll have time to ride your bike. Anyone else? Yes.
Wes Wenson, 308 Wisconsin Avenue. I was wondering if any consideration has been given to extending the trail from the fuel depot gate into the Bay Marina property to meet up with the paths and everything that are planned for there, and go by the restaurants, go by the bay so you can watch the sunset. It
The
just
answer to
seems-
that is yes. That has been in the discussion from the beginning.
Is it,
So, yes.
is it
So,
positive? I mean, people
yes.
are actually.
Yes, the developers are very positive about doing
Good.
that, yes.
And then how about extending it all the way from 231 to the recreational facility?
To the sports complex?
Yes.
And that is in the works too, isn't it? Or not? I was thinking it was.
No, it crosses 389, it goes to 231, and if you go north from 231, you would run into the recreational facility.
The Lynn Haven
park-
Sports Complex.
Sports complex.
He's just using.
Well, that one entrance of it is on 389, but you'd come up, couldn't you come up, you might have to build a path, but. No, no.
Okay, let's go one
Yeah,
at a time.
Okay,
Thank you.
one more thing.
That's okay.
About crossing Highway 77 with traffic lights. That just curdles my blood. Has anybody considered a flyover? I know it'd be really expensive, but it's been done in a lot of other places. And you could cross 390, you could cross 77 and come on down. You wouldn't have to delay traffic. I mean, there's a lot of traffic on 77. It's more now than it was when I first moved here in 74. I don't think the people who are driving, the truckers and everybody, are really going to appreciate somebody pushing a button and then watching a bicycle go across the street. So that's a concern of mine. And one more question. What happened to the railroad spikes? The railroad spikes?
I don't know the answer to the spikes.
Part of the salvage.
I've picked
Metal
part of the metal, but there is some still out there.
Can I go collect a few?
I do not own them, or I'd let you. I think Mr. Bells will not mind you grabbing a few.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have a comment? Sir, I believe you.
This whole thing started from Lynn Haven originally. Your city planner, Wayne Matthews, brought it to the Bike Ped Advisory Committee, to the MPO 23 years ago, 25 years ago. Whew. Well, anyway, a long time back. So it originally started with y'all. It started with the city commission. It started with Wayne Matthews. It started with the mayor back then. So this has been happening for a long, long time. Francis put together a group of us. There was myself and Neil Lamb, and there was about a half dozen of us, and we put together all kind of ideas and plans. There was going to be a loop into the recreation complex off the trail. In other words, St. Joe owns some property there, and St. Joe had agreed to provide some access so we could use some of their property to actually run the trail right into the rec complex. And we talked to Gulf Power, because there's a power line right away, too, that's kind of on the other end that ties into the community and neighborhood. So there was all this. We actually did a public workshop at Gulf Coast State College, and they had a room packed to the walls. And the Rails to Trails people were there, and the state FDOT people were there, the bike people. I mean, it was pretty amazing, but at that time there wasn't a lot of support, unfortunately, from the city manager and from the commission. Whereas today, you guys are like, I mean, it's amazing. So there's been this whole 180-degree shift from what it was like back then. So thank you all for making this happen. But I agree with Wes. I think with a 4-lane highway, there should be a pedestrian overpass. Not like the one they built down south that fell in the road. Something that's, made to last for years and years and years. You can go down and look at the Pinellas Trail, and anywhere there's a 4-lane highway where the Pinellas Trail crosses, there is an overpass. They don't cross its surface. 2-lane street is fine. Like East Avenue, 389, whatever it is, that's a 2-lane, that would be fine. But crossing 77 without a pedestrian overpass would be suicide. I mean, it just wouldn't be safe. So, considering all the traffic there. But if it's a lower trafficked road, it'd be different. But it's a really, 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 really heavily trafficked road, one of the most heavily trafficked roads in all of Bay County. So we need to look at money to do that. And I know it's millions and millions of dollars. None of those things are cheap. That's probably be the most expensive thing to ever do for that trail. But I'm assuming we already harvested the steel off the trail. That's already been done? Yeah, because that was one way some of the trails have financed some of the work, because they actually sold the steel rails to generate some revenue. Even some of the ballast rock is valuable too, but we need to probably use that for base, But anyway, like I said, I've been involved in this thing for over 20 years, on and off. So I'm just glad to see it finally happening. And please consider the pedestrian overpass. Please think about the loop and talk to St. Joe, because they own that connected property. connecting it into the recreation complex, because that'd be a great place to park and then take that little loop and get on the trail. Because you already got plenty of parking there. You've already got plenty of access that you already own. You don't have to buy any property. You don't, all you got to do is work with St. Joe and just put a little loop into the rec complex. So, and like I said, talk to Gulf Power, because they had talked to us earlier too, back in the day, about doing a connection on the other end and tying in with the actual right of way for the power line corridor, because there's all kind of space.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate
Ideas,
it.
lots of ideas.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Forehand, go ahead.
A couple of points you made. One, about the overpass. Some other things to think about too. 77, you have stoplights and you have crosswalks. Right out here we have a crosswalk. People walk across all the time. So it's not uncommon to cross a road like this with this much traffic. So as far as the access to the sports park, one of the ideas that I had, if you recall earlier, I mentioned a trail on 389 that the county just installed. I'm sure you probably have seen that. Well, it goes straight past Aberdeen Parkway, which goes into the industrial park, which now connects to the sports park. So I've kind of had some discussions with the city manager about potentially connecting to that trail and extending that trail all the way to the sports park. So that would be a direct connection. So that kind of solves the issue of what you mentioned.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question or comment? Mrs. Harrison, did you have one more question? Thank you. Okay, does anyone else have a question? Yes, Mrs. Whitcoff.
I wasn't sure this was ever going to happen, but finally it has.
Can you pull the microphone down so we can hear you? There you go. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Y'all have worked hard on it. And we tried a lot of different commissioners, and at Tyndall, we went to see the general and lots of places, and worked on trying to get this. And now, here we are. Now what you need to do is do a skateboard park now.
I love it. I love it.
We need that for that age bracket. They don't have anything like that. They really need that. In fact, we worked on that also. And, you can't do everything. You try, but work at it. So thank you very much. And there's 8,000, I think, miles of land that could be used for trails all around. So they're everywhere. You can do this, connect. And he mentioned the park over there, and that was talked about too, to have it to adjust right in there. And also we had talked about across the bridge over here, our old bridge, you could use that. And on the other side of it, you can go on up, and then you could make Gales trails off over there. There's lots of things out there. But it costs money, I know. Work on it. Thank you very, very much.
Well, it not only costs money, but it takes people like you who continue to push forward and to continue to push everyone to do what they need to do. And everyone here appreciates you, and I would like to give you a round of applause.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have a comment? Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Whitcoff. And yes, you're right. People keep us pushing to do the right thing. And I just had to make a quick comment about the skate park. My 14-year-old son has been hounding me for 3 months about a skate park, and I actually printed out a petition drive for him to start going and getting signatures. So expect to see that here in the next month or two from me.
That's awesome news.
Thank you, Mayor.
Pardon me, Mrs. Did you have something else you wanted to say? You didn't use your whole 3 minutes, if you do. Oh, she said she would be on your committee. That's awesome. Anyone else? Okay, we have about 12 minutes before our CRA board meeting begins, and I know Chris Forehand did bring plans with him today and offered for anyone to look at them that would like to look at those. We do appreciate so much all of you coming out today for this workshop, and we invite you to stay for the 5 o'clock CRA meeting and then the 6 o'clock commission meeting which follows. And this workshop is adjourned.